The New Orleans Saints will play the Minnesota Vikings this Sunday in a game that's going to tell us everything we need to know and everything Dennis Allen's got in this team. Let's talk about it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? It's your host, Chris Vogel of the Straight Up Saints podcast, brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. You've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt offshore. Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. Now, Saints, Vikings, this Sunday could very well decide whether or not the Saints are a playoff team, whether you like it or not. There is actual numbers that will tell us the Saints win this Sunday. Get ready for a playoff appearance. I truly do mean that. If the Saints lose, it doesn't mean you're out of the playoffs, but we start to get a feel as to what type of team they are. So I'll discuss that in just a moment. Also want to talk about Brian Flores' Vikings defense, Pete Carmichael's Saints offense. That's kind of the head-to-head that I'm looking at. Which coordinator is going to get the best out of that matchup? Derek Carr, this is going to be a huge game for him. We'll talk about number 4, as always. And then slowing down, newly acquired quarterback for the Vikings, Josh Dobbs. He had a heroic effort last week, which we all applauded, right? It's great when Josh Dobbs has a great fourth quarter comeback against the Falcons because we love seeing the Falcons lose. We don't want to see that this Sunday, though, when he plays the Saints. So we'll get to all that. And any comments that you guys have, put them in the chat, and I'll pull them up towards the end and put out anything you guys have to say. But let's start off with what I said at the top of the show, and that is the truth. This Sunday is going to tell us an awful lot about the New Orleans Saints. It's not just opinion-based, it's also fact-based. Let's start off with the numbers here. The Week 10 playoff probability leverage has the Saints at 86% chance of making the playoffs if they win this Sunday against the Vikings. 86% with a win. At 6-4, the playoff odds, it's very favorable for them to get into the postseason if they win this Sunday against the Vikings. If they lose, it's not terrible. It drops into the 60s, but it's still manageable. But you see the gap. If you get into 6-4 going into the bye week, and then you have the Falcons coming out of it, you start to get some confidence for the Saints. And I think for New Orleans, the reason why this weekend is so important is it's the first litmus test for this team. Through the first 9 weeks of the season, no team has played an easier schedule in the NFL than the New Orleans Saints. The numbers back it up. The opponents that they faced, a total of 28 wins. I think that's a 37% winning percentage about. Not great. Next closest is the Raiders. They also have an easy schedule. So the Saints have had a pretty, I'd say, cupcake of a schedule for them, and yet they're only at 5-4. Some of it you want to say collapses. Others you want to say bad offense. Other times you want to say bad coaching, blame whatever you want. I think all those can kind of fall in it. This year we can't blame injuries, thankfully. But for the Saints, easy schedule, yet you're only 5-4. And now you're playing Minnesota that, despite losing Kirk Cousins, despite dealing with injuries this year, starting off 1-4, have found a way to get themselves to the same record, 5-4, and have showed that, man, they got a damn good coach in Kevin O'Connell, who, in my opinion, should be the favorite to be coach of the year. Now, I don't know if he'll win the award, but what he's done with that group is nothing short of phenomenal. And now you have a chance for the Saints. Because even though the Saints have won 2 in a row, and even though they're over 500, and even though if I had to put money on it, if I had to go to DraftKings right now and put money on it, I would say the Saints will win the NFC South. They have not had a win where you go, that's the defining win of their season yet. I loved the Colts win. That was a fun game. Probably the most fun I had watching the Saints this year. But I don't know if beating the Colts is a defining win. I know beating the Bears by 7 last week when you had 5 turnovers, that's not a defining win. Patriots, they keep looking worse and worse each week, so that's not your defining win. And I don't know if beating the Ryan Tannehill Titans in week 1 and then beating the Bryce Young Panthers it's hard to win in this league. So any win is a win worth celebrating. That's the way I see it. But from an analytical perspective, I put my Saints fandom to the side for a sec. The Saints don't have a win this year that you can point to and go, you know what? Similar performance in the playoffs, that gets you a dub. So for me, that is why I think that for New Orleans, there are legit problems at the moment in terms of whether or not you think they're going to be a contender in the NFC. And if you beat the Vikings, does that mean the Saints are a Super Bowl team? Absolutely not. Does it mean, though, if they can beat a Minnesota team that's surging right now, my confidence goes up in a game against maybe Seattle or maybe Dallas in a playoff game, yeah, it would actually help my confidence to go on the road into Minnesota, a place where the Saints haven't had that much success, historically speaking, and go out there and get the W. So this is going to be an important game. And like I said, the numbers are there. Win on Sunday, and the Saints have an 86% chance of making the playoffs. Boy, does that sound great to me, and I'd love to see that come into fruition. So we'll see if that's the case for the Saints this Sunday when they play the Vikings. And remember, the other reason why that percentage goes up for the Saints with the win is you'd be 6-4 going into a back half of the schedule that is very favorable, because the quarterbacks after Josh Dobbs, Taylor Heineke, all right, a journeyman type of guy. Jared Goff, no knock on him. Jared Goff's been balling this year. Then it's Bryce Young, who's still finding himself. Then it's Tommy DeVito, the third string quarterback of the Giants. Then it's Matt Stafford, if he's healthy. Then it's Baker Mayfield, and then Heineke again to close it out. So the Saints aren't going to go through a murderer's row of guys here, and I think this is a really good opportunity for them. Now, if the Saints are going to win Sunday, and if they're going to get to 6-4 and increase that playoff probability, like I mentioned, they need their offense to show up. And their offense is going to have some trouble on Sunday. They're going up against a Minnesota defense coached by Brian Flores, who's proven that, you know what? He's a damn good coach. And remember, Brian Flores got fired from Miami despite having back-to-back winning seasons. Now, no one's going to really knock that move from the Dolphins because Mike McDaniel's been great with them. Hard to really knock that at all. And they went in the offensive direction. And that's helped Tua Tagovailoa, and that's helped that offense in general. But Brian Flores is a really, really respectable coach. And Brian Flores has coached the Minnesota defense right now that has looked really damn good. And the numbers the last couple of weeks for Minnesota just keeps getting better and better. And I think what really shifted for them was that Monday night game against the Niners, stifling Christian McCaffrey, holding him to 45 rushing yards, forcing 2 late interceptions from Brock Purdy. And then that confidence carried over into the following week, where they beat the Packers, hold them to 10 points, force Jordan Love into some really, really rough throws. And then the following week, points-wise, not the best day for the Vikings defense. But in terms of forcing havoc and making the quarterback get off his spot, pretty damn good, because Taylor Heineke threw the ball 38 times and he only had 4 more completions than he did incompletion. So this Minnesota defense, statistically the last 3 weeks, getting better and better. And the one thing that they're going to do, and the Saints got to make sure they absolutely bring it Sunday, is getting ready for an all-out assault in terms of the pass rush. The Vikings, this is the stat that blew my mind. In terms of blitz rate, number 1 in the league, Minnesota Vikings blitzing 51.3% of the time. Brian Flores right now has been sending the house. And then this is the more telling stat to me. No team right now in the NFL has sent more 6-man or more pass rushes at a team this year than Minnesota. So 6-man rush, 7-man, I mean, they will send the house at you this season. That's how Brian Flores wants to get it done. And so far, it hasn't really burned him yet the last couple of weeks. The only quarterback in the last month and a half that's really shred them is Patrick Mahomes. But, I mean, who hasn't been beat by Patrick Mahomes? So this is a really, really good defense right now in terms of ascending for the Vikings. A lot of it goes down to coaching, because last year Minnesota's defense was downright horrendous. In fact, Minnesota's defense was so bad that Daniel Jones got a 4-year, $160 million contract because he kicked their ass in the playoffs, to just put it bluntly. So this Minnesota defense, definitely on the right track. And for the Saints, the reason why it's going to be such a challenge, not only because they blitz heavy, not only because Brian Flores is one of the more respectable defensive minds in the NFL, is the Saints haven't been challenged like this in a couple of weeks. The Colts, bottom 7 pass defense. The Bears, bottom 7 pass defense. So now you're going up against a Minnesota defense that is much better than those two right now in terms of the way they're playing. You still got to account for an elite pass rusher in Danielle Hunter and make sure he doesn't wreck the game. And Minnesota, a lot of their injuries, and they have dealt with a bunch this year, primarily on the offensive side of the ball. Now, obviously, the Kirk Cousins injury is huge, man. That's the type of injury for most teams wrecks your season. For Minnesota, we'll see. They brought in Josh Dobbs. So far, he's 1 for 1 on keeping the ship afloat. But this is going to be a challenge, and I'm so fascinated to see how Pete, if he answers the call or not, because I think Pete has had this kind of moments where it's good followed by bad. Really good performance against New England, followed by a bad performance against Houston, followed by a somewhat okay performance against the Jags, which is then followed by their best performance against the Colts. And now the Bears game is fascinating because I watched it over again yesterday, and I didn't think the Saints offensively did terrible things. I actually thought the first half they were pretty good on offense. I like the way they moved the ball. I thought the red zone offense was good. It's more so the miscues on certain plays, the inability to get the run game going, which scares the crap out of me, because if you take out the factor of Taysom Hill being dynamic, the run game with the running backs has not been elite this year. That concerns me because it hasn't even just been not elite. It's just been poor. So got to get that for sure. So this is the type of game that's going to tell me a lot about Pete Carmichael, because you're going up against a defensive coordinator that has proven to be a winning head coach record-wise in the NFL. And now you got to answer the call on the road. Derek Carr's got to hang in tough. He's got to know that the blitzes are coming. And Derek Carr's got to be a $40 million quarterback Sunday. He doesn't have to be a $40 million quarterback every week, because some weeks the Saints are going to play teams where you can play ball control, you can lean on your defense. And while I think this is going to be a defensive game, and the over-under tells you it's going to be a defensive game, I mean, this thing has been flirting around 41 points right now. You need your $40 million quarterback to step in and be better this Sunday. A mediocre performance will not be enough for me. Now, I'm not asking Derek Carr to throw for 350 and 3 touchdowns. That's absurd. What I'm asking Derek Carr is, A, don't make any silly mistakes. B, hang in tough when you need to. He did that last week against the Bears. He's got to do that again. He can't short arm balls and just, look like he's kind of quitting on the play because you want to get hit. He's got to hang in tough. Because remember, you got the bye week on the other side of this thing. So you'll have time to rest up. So Derek Carr's got to hang in there. He's got to do his thing. And we'll see if it will, offensively. But I think that this is going to be the battle that dictates this game. Carmichael, Brian Flores, which coordinator wins it? And the safe money probably is on Brian Flores. But you know what? Pete, since the Jacksonville game, has been a lot better. And I want to see if he can continue that trend, because that's going to be important. Now, another thing that New Orleans has to do if they want to beat Minnesota this Sunday, you better slow down Josh Dobbs. You better slow down Josh Dobbs, because this is a really, really bad matchup right now for the Saints, because the New Orleans Saints are not stopping quarterbacks in the run game, and Josh Dobbs is running for a lot of yards this year. So let's go through Dobbs first. He's had at least 6 carries in each of the last couple of games since October 15th. So he's running the football at a consistent clip, about 6 carries or more each game there. And he's had 6 games this year with at least 40 rushing yards. 6 games with at least 40 rushing yards. Damn good number for him. A lot of that obviously with Arizona. Just had the one game against the Falcons. But he was great in his debut with the Vikings. 60-plus rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground. So you know what you're going to get from him. The problem is, not only do you know you're going to get good running from Dobbs and smart running, because he really is one of the smarter quarterbacks in the NFL, you're going up against a defense that gave up 70 rushing yards to Bagent and the Bears, that gave up 59 rushing yards to Trevor Lawrence on a bum knee, by the way, that gave up 39 rushing yards to Jordan Love, 34 rushing yards to Bryce Young. So the Saints are not doing a good job of containing. They're not doing a good job of making sure that the quarterback doesn't just split down the seas when they part and go pick up 15, 20, 25 yards in the ground game. They're not doing that. And the one thing Josh Dobbs is going to do, if you give it to him, he's going to take advantage of that. And he's not just going to do it in that regard. He's going to do it on broken plays. He's going to do plays when he's rolling out of the pocket. He's going to make it happen. And it's on the Saints to minimize the damage. Because if Josh Dobbs runs for 60-plus this Sunday, chalk it up as an L most likely. Because I think in a game where both defense are probably going to do their thing, it's those game-breaking plays, it's those back-breaking runs that the Saints can't afford to give up. And I know this isn't a good run defense. It's a good defense, but it's not a good run defense. And I know that it's tough to ask them to do something they haven't done well this year, stopping quarterbacks from running. But man, if there's ever a week where you got to fix it, it's this week against Josh Dobbs and the Vikings, because I think that's going to be a big factor in this game. Because I think we're going to be looking at this one and they're going to be kind of knotted up at 14, 17, whatever it may be. And it could be the difference in the game, whether you stop or allow Josh Dobbs to go for a huge run. So I am very interested to see how that all plays out. And that is absolutely going to be a factor for the Saints. And it's something that concerns the hell out of me for this one. And that's why I keep going back and forth with this game. I felt like the Saints would beat the Bears last week. I felt like they would beat the Colts. So those wins to me, yes, it's great to predict the Saints win and be right about it. Don't get me wrong. I love doing that. But I also don't want to come out here and say every game they're going to win. And it is, because we know that's not true, 1. And 2, this is an even matchup because the roster goes to the Saints. I think they have a better roster than the Vikings. But the Vikings are a better coach football team right now because Kevin O'Connell been, like I said, arguably the coach of the year. And you got a second head coach on the staff in Brian Flores, who's doing a hell of a job with that defense. So I'm really, really getting pulled here both ways. Part of me says Dobbs and the Vikings fall back down to earth just a tad after an emotional win against the Falcons, And the Saints, who beat the Bears, know they have things to correct, come into this game and continue to build off momentum. But I got to see it. I got to see it because I have not seen a 3-game win streak from Dennis Allen of significance. We've seen two-game win streaks this year, start of the year, and then the last 2 that they're currently riding on. But this is going to tell me a lot. And I know it sounds silly to some, but I'm going to learn a lot from the Saints. If they lose to the Vikings, I'm going to look at them as win one, lose one type of team where they'll be 8-9 or 9-8, and they'll make the playoffs. And obviously, it's still good to make the playoffs, but they'll make the playoffs. If they win this one, there's a chance that they kind of maybe run the table here and get a little bit of confidence. And you know what? In 2 weeks' time, you don't really want to project too much down the future, but in 2-3 weeks' time, you're going to play the Detroit Lions. And boy, would you love to have a lot of confidence going into that game because that could be a playoff preview, depending on how things shake out. So I think this is going to be a tough game for the Saints. I'm still somewhat leaning because of the talent on this roster and because I'm always afraid to pick teams coming off emotional wins. And I think the Vikings had that in spades last week against the Falcons. I still think I'm leaning Saints slightly, but like 21-20, 23-20, like around that ballpark. And I don't even know that. It could be 2017, could be even more low scoring. So I would not be shocked if the Saints lose this game, but make no mistake about it. Even though they're on the road, they should still win this game. They got to win this game to prove what type of team they are. So I want to hear what you guys have to say. So put your comments in the chat and I'll get to them. Before we do that, though, I want to get a quick word from one of our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook.
In the NBA, the game can change in an instant, but no matter how the action unfolds, you know DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score 150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get an instant dub. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code BOOT. New customers can get 150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code BOOT. The crown is yours.
Once again, thank you to DraftKings Sportsbook for being part of the program. So let's get into any comments that you guys have, and that's how we're going to wrap up this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. We're going to start off with Cooler Beats saying, I feel Saints dub. Most likely will be a close one, but hoping for a convincing win to make it 3 in a row. This team is due for a complete game. I'm going to be honest. First off, I love the optimism. And you know what? Like I just said, I believe the Saints will win this game, but I could very well see them losing it because I think these are two pretty evenly matched teams right now. Like I said, roster goes to the Saints, coaching goes to the Vikings. Coaching in this league makes a hell of a difference. We all know that. It doesn't have to be super convincing for me in terms of the score. If the Saints go into Minnesota and they win 24-20, maybe that doesn't make people run to the podium, start singing the Saints' praises. But it would tell me, you know what? The Saints could, on Wild Card Weekend, play a playoff caliber team, because if you make the playoffs, you're obviously a playoff caliber team, and get shit done. Because right now, I have reservations about them. Now, I have reservations about a lot of NFC teams right now. I don't know if I love Seattle. Obviously, we got to see how San Francisco plays this Sunday. Dallas, I've never seen a team celebrate a moral victory until now because they're acting as if they beat the Eagles, even though they did not. So the NFC right now as a whole, everyone's kind of trying to figure things out. Now, the Eagles have a big gap over everyone because they find ways to win regardless of struggling at times. But if you go out there and beat a Minnesota team that is coming off wins against the Packers, wins against the Falcons, wins against the Niners, this would be telling for me. This would tell me that, you know what, they can hang with people in their weight class right now. Now, I know the Saints can beat teams below their weight class. You got to start punching at your own weight. And then you make progress because in 2 weeks after that, you'll play Detroit, and that's going to be a team above your weight class, but we'll see where you stand. So I love the optimism. I think there's definitely a chance they come out of Minnesota with a win. For me, though, the scoreboard doesn't have to be crazy as long as it ends up in a win, because this is going to be a really tough challenge for them. Libby says, I'm so nervous about this game. I want to win so badly. I don't have nerves right now. I'm sure, as the kickoff gets closer, I'll feel it. But for now, I'm pretty relaxed at the moment. But I'm sure that'll change. Cooler Beat says offensive line will need to be reliable for this one. Absolutely. Offensive line needs to hold up. Blocking in terms of picking up the blitz, that's important. So this might be a Jamal Williams game because Jamal Williams did a good job blocking on Sunday. Now, so did Alvin. I put up a clip where Carr hits Olave for the touchdown in the left-hand corner of the end zone. And the throw is obviously great. You like that he hangs in the pocket. Alvin picks up the free blitzer up the middle. That gives Derek enough time. Going to need more of that on Sunday against the Vikings because, like I said, they are blitzing more than any other team, and they're sending 6-man rushes more than any other team. So they are coming after people. K Rosa 88 says, every Sunday going to tell us a lot about this team. I need to see consistency and improvement in every single game. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I will say, every Sunday is different, though. Like last Sunday, if the Saints lose, you're like, all right, you really want me to believe in a team that's going to lose to the Bears? Now, they beat them, but it wasn't convincing, and they forced 5 turnovers, didn't take advantage. So that is a concern. So I get your point. I agree. You learn something every week. This week, though, for me, will tell us more about the Saints and probably any game since the Jacksonville one. More than the Colts, more than the Bears, because A, NFC games are so important. You want to get those conference wins. B, it's on the road. And then C, for me, this is the challenge for the Saints offense. It's great that they exploited a bad Colts defense. It's good that they moved the ball against the Bears. Should have put up more points, but they moved the ball against the Bears. But that's another bad defense. You're playing against Minnesota now. Minnesota's got some confidence. They are not a group full of scrubs. It's going to be a challenge. And it's in Minnesota. Those fans are going to be rocking. This will tell us a lot. Jerry G says, good evening. Good evening, Jerry. Rose City says, who dat? Who dat, man? Paul says, Derek Carr will be rattled this weekend by Danielle Hunter. Very possible. Very, very possible. I would not be shocked at all if that is the case. That is definitely one of the concerns with Derek Carr, just his overall ability to hang in tough. I think he did a really good job with it last week. But, man, you got to make sure that this is the week where ball's coming out quick. He's not giving up on plays because if you have that attitude and you're going up a team that's just going to keep sending it and sending it, it could be tough. It could absolutely be tough for the Saints. So, Derek Carr, challenge is on you. You got to win games like this. That's why you get paid. Eric says, who dat, fam? Who dat, Eric? Noah says, I'm expecting a big game from Carr. I love the optimism. I don't know if he'll get the big game, but look, if he does, that would be huge for the Saints. Because, like I said, you pay him to win these type of conference games. If he gets this one and Carr looks good, we got to start thinking, you know what? The Saints are going to be a little bit better than what we thought a couple weeks ago. Now, are they Super Bowl caliber? No, they would have to go. They'd probably have to rattle off like 6, 7 in a row. And even then, so many people would doubt them. And I'd understand why. But a big game from Carr, yes, that would change a lot of, I guess the narrative for some people. Some people will still be out on him, but I think Derek Carr's looked a lot better the last couple of weeks and he's looking comfortable. And I don't want to see that progress get derailed in Minnesota. I like to see him build off it. Got a super chat from Hoodie Juby. Thank you for the support, my man. I greatly appreciate it as always. He says, some improvements I've seen was Carr threw 2 touchdowns in the red zone. That's some improvement. Need to continue improvement in the red zone. Who dat? Absolutely. You had the touchdown pass to Olave on a 3rd down. Love to see that from him. Hanging tough. Get good blocking from Pete, McCoy, Hurst, Kamara. They already did their job on that one. And then the one to Taysom, he gets that ball out super quick. Taysom on the quick out route. Easy money there. The Saints' red zone offense the last 2 weeks has been so much better. A lot of it comes down to Taysom Hill. He really makes things easier for them. The fact that they run the ball in the red zone, you give another threat for defenses to cover. But Derek has been better for sure. And Derek could get to another level. Like, I don't think this is it for Derek. I think Derek Carr can take one more step. And if he does, that's great for this offense. But I agree with you. He's making improvement. Now we just want to see a little bit more, and we don't want to see regression. That's for sure. Need another Taysom game, says K. Rossi 88. Says, I feel like that's going to be the case a lot for the remainder of the year. Carr's got to step up. Yeah, look, you want a Taysom game every week. I think Minnesota, like most teams now, you're going to kind of game plan around, can we take Taysom out? That's why I love that they threw a Taysom at the goal line, because you're giving a different look. You're making teams respect that pass. But, I mean, until someone stops Taysom, probably going to say he'll continue to do his thing. I don't know if it's an 11-carry game like last week, though. That was a pretty big workload for him. But you want a big game from Taysom. And the beauty about Taysom Hill this year more than any other year is even if he's not doing it as a runner, or if he doesn't have one big splash play as a passer, he's also been helping as a receiver. At this rate, Taysom Hill is going to finish this year with the most receptions he's ever had in a season. He's been really good for them in the pass game as well. So I agree. You want another big game from Taysom. You need another big game from Taysom. You got to keep thinking he's going to do it until he gets stopped. But yeah, Carr obviously has to do his job, and hopefully he can. Cooler Beat says, which one of our receivers can have a big game, Kamara included? I'm trying to go back to thinking about the way the Vikings defense has looked the last couple of weeks. You can't really put the Packers game into it because the Packers are just so lethargic offensively, and they don't move the ball well through the pass, and part of that's Jordan Love struggling. I go back to look at the Niners, and Brandon Ayuk was phenomenal on deep crossers, something that Chris Olave can absolutely do, something Rashid Shaheed can do. Obviously, Mike can do it too, but they use Mike in so many intermediate things for me. I think this is a game where you get Mike going early and often. Obviously, you want to get Olave going, but it all fluctuates week to week. I'm expecting at least one big play to Rashid Shaheed this Sunday. At least one big play. I think the Vikings can be got on those deep crossers. That's where I think that those deep posts, you can get them on. And I think if you go back to Saints Bears this past weekend, Carr throws it out to the flat to Jamal because the pressure's coming on and he just wants to kind of get it out. And you don't want to really blame, you don't want to blame quarterbacks for getting the ball quick to check down. There's like nothing technically wrong with the play. But if he kind of just moves a little bit to the left of his pocket, he can fire it towards the outside corner to Rashid Shaheed on a deep throw, and that would change a lot. So for me, I think Shaheed could have a big game here. I would not be surprised if he does. But I also expect Mike to bounce back. I mean, it's Michael Thomas. I've never really seen two horrible games from, and it's not from bad production. Like, it's not like Mike wasn't doing his job. Mike was just getting double team, triple team, bracket coverage, you name it. And he was still getting open. There's actually a play, if Carr hits him, he probably has a 20-yard touchdown. Now, Carr hits Juwan Johnson, they get the first down. You still love to see that. But the Bears are like, man, we're not going to let Mike beat us. That was kind of their plan. Got another super chat here from Hoodie Juby. Thank you for the support, man. We greatly appreciate you here at Booker Media. He says, last game is crazy, though. Double and triple teamed on Michael Thomas, and then Saunders double team and left Juwan wide open. Love that formation with 99. So, yeah, you mentioned Michael Thomas. Great point. So much double coverage for him, which is why he wasn't really targeted. But it's all about making sure guys feed off that. And as for the Colin Saunders one, still blows my mind that he was double teamed. I mean, I know Colin's a big guy. I just didn't think that they were going to have two defenders go in that area. And Juwan kind of slips out the back door and is wide open. And I love that play because when you at least throw it once with Taysom, every meeting room now has to account for that play. And if they don't want to respect it, you run that shit again. And if they respect the pass too much and disrespect the run game a little bit, you know Taysom has no problem running that football. So I loved it. That was probably my favorite play, offensively speaking, of the Sunday game against the Bears, outside of two perfectly executed screen passes, one to Kamara, one to Kendra Miller. So we'll see if they run that again. I would love to see it. No doubt about that. Jerry says, either we go 6-4 or 5-5. Shout out to Ross Jackson. The Saints are getting healthy and better than ever. Well, first off, shout out to Ross Jackson whenever, wherever, because that man is one of the best in the business. And probably the nicest guy I've ever met, honestly. He's fantastic. As for the Saints getting healthy, yeah, Ross put it out, which was great. He compared the injury report today to the injury report last year around this time, where it was like a CVS receipt of injuries. And this year, it's really just about 2 or 3. The Saints have been fortunate this year. Now, remember, they made some changes to the medical staff, and clearly that's been working so far. Need fast starts on both sides of the ball, says Rose City, you heard? Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Millie says they need a speed on pass rushing for once and stop taking their foot off the gas when they have the lead, but it's sweet Carmichael calling the plays. Yeah, I mean, didn't take their foot off the gas against Indianapolis, which I loved. You could say maybe foot off the gas against the Bears, definitely foot off the gas against the Patriots, but honestly, at that point, I kind of understand it. I mean, when you have a struggling Mac Jones, it's okay to kind of slam on the brakes. But I agree. I want to see full throttle for this Saints team, especially if they go up against this one. Because I'll say this. Last week, the Falcons didn't put away the Vikings. And boy, did they regret that because they went home with an L when they had that game for most of it. So yeah, I agree. Libby says defense is going to have to show up early and get after Dobbs for sure. And that is an important thing, the early part that you mentioned. The Saints defense, as good as they are in the second half, because Dennis Allen makes adjustments like no other coach in the second half when it comes to defense. First half Saints defense has been bad. Like, it is a problem. And it's something that I think this team knows, and Dennis Allen's addressed it, but it hasn't gotten better. First half against the Jaguars, they give up 17 points. First half against the Colts, the Saints give up 20 points. First half against the Bears, the Saints give up 14 points. So First half hasn't been good. Defense has to get better. They can't have these slow starts there. I love what they do in the second half. They just really just bog down on opposing offenses, but you don't want to get beat that early in the jump. Millie 2 says, another thing is Groupie, bro, you're going to cost the Saints games. They should have won. They could have kept Will Lutz due to inconsistent. I don't want to say I'm surprised. I'm not surprised that the Saints decided not to bring in competition. I'm a little frustrated, though, because they're saying you got to be patient and they have confidence in him. And they're saying the right things in that regard because you don't want to kick him in when he's down. But what happens if Blake Groupie misses a big kick this weekend against the Vikings? Now, all the blame's going to go to Groupie, right? A lot of people are going to say he's responsible for the loss, this and that. But is the coaching staff, is the GM going to get any blame if Groupie goes out there, misses another big kick, but they decided after missing a bunch this year that they didn't need to bring in competition? That's all I want to know. And I don't want that to happen. I want Blake Groupie to come out here and kick a game-winning field goal against the Vikings. That's what I want. I don't want anyone to get fired. I don't want anyone to lose their job. I'm not advocating for that. I don't like to see that. But Dennis Allen said a month ago, if guys aren't doing their job, we got to find someone to come in here and execute that job. Blake Groupie's not doing his job right now. And I know the kid's got a leg, but he doesn't seem confident right now. He seems a little shaky in the clutch. Hopefully, last Sunday was the last big kick he'll miss. But I don't know. And I'm going to be quite honest. I don't know about you guys, but I don't feel confident in Blake Groupie stepping up to hit a big kick late in this game if that's what it comes down to. Libby says, yeah, Groupie needs to be excellent or we need to bring in other kickers. I agree. No doubt about it. Trey Gift says, did you watch the Breeze Chase Daniel breakdown of Carr? So funny enough, I was watching that before I went live today, which is why I was running a couple of minutes behind because I wanted to get through. I am up to, I got to scroll back and find where I'm at. I'm 8 minutes and 13 seconds into the video. So I still got about 12 minutes to go. Loved what I saw first off. I think Chase is really good at breaking down plays, by the way. I love Drew. Obviously, Drew's football mind better than Chase. Chase has a little bit more energy when he's talking about it. Drew's still a little stiff. Obviously, love Drew. But I like how Chase has been doing the breakdowns. They've been pretty good. And obviously, who knows better than two guys that have run Pete Carmichael's system? Obviously, Drew way more than Chase. But I'm going to definitely get through the rest of the breakdown and see how it goes. But so far, what I've seen, I liked it for sure. Saints play better on the road. I think most defensive teams kind of love that. It's catered toward them. And I feel good about the Saints winning on the road, to be honest. Saints healthy, but have too many question marks. Coaching and play calling is two of them. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that's the biggest question mark for the Saints is coaching. I don't think anyone questioned that. The roster is good. Look, do I have questions about the quarterback? Yes. Do I have questions about the pass rush? Also, yes. The pass rush isn't very good. Questions about the first half defense? Yes. Questions about Pete Carmichael? Absolutely. Questions about the run game if a team finds a way to slow down Taysom Hill? Yes. But a lot of teams got questions right now, and it's not Thanksgiving yet. We're getting close. It's not Thanksgiving yet. So the Saints have a couple more games to kind of hit their stride. By December, we don't want 1,000 question marks. So they got about 20 days to figure this shit out. Jerome says, I believe the defense will step up and be motivated this week. For sure. I got no doubt about it. Trey Gibbs says, little off topic. Love the show. I'm just curious why you don't upload every stream to Spotify. That's a great question. I will get to work on that. I'll get to work on that, Trey. I'll make sure that happens. We get it on Spotify for sure. My apologies that it didn't. That's on me. I gotta be better and realize that it wasn't uploading there. So I'll make sure that we get it up there for you guys, though. Thank you for calling that out, though. K Rose 88 says, do you see Dobbs making mistakes that lead to turnovers due to not completely knowing the playbook? Yeah, no, for sure. And I think for Dobbs, it comes down to when he's played some pretty good defenses. Against the Ravens, 2 interceptions. Against the Bengals, 2 interceptions. Against the Rams, 1 interception. So when you get pressure on him, you kind of put a little weight on his shoulders and get him out of structure. I think you got a shot. Now, he's had more clean games than not. He's had, let me just do my math here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games without a turnover, 3 games with. But 2 of the 3 were multi-interception games. So, yeah, he could absolutely make a couple mistakes in this one. The Saints have the secondary to force those mistakes. Don't anticipate Justin Jefferson playing. So, a lot of focus on Jordan Addison. Slow down Jordan Addison. If you can do that, I say Dobbs will throw at least an interception. But you got to slow down Jordan Addison because he's been on a tear the last couple weeks. And then Hawkinson's obviously been a safety net whoever quarterback is in there for the Vikings. But yeah, I could see Dobbs making mistakes. Like you said, it's not more so about the playbook because the guy is a genius. He really is. It's more so Dobbs isn't the greatest quarterback in the world. He's doing a great job this year. He's been one of the best surprises of this season, but he's not an elite quarterback. And the Saints tied for first in takeaways. It's just what they do. So, if the Saints don't force a turnover, I'd be a little bit surprised. I would. Trey Gift says the fact that they had to pull a rabbit out of a hat to beat the Falcons should make us feel a little bit better about this game. But Dobbs' legs are definitely scary. For sure. Absolutely. His legs are scary. But yeah, I just don't, historically, I don't like teams coming off emotional wins. I feel like there's always a little bit of a letdown because you're off such a high. And we all know how life works. And not just about football, man. There's always a kind of a low after a high because life's kind of unfair and you can never have too many good moments before you kind of come crashing back down to earth. And I think for the Vikings right now, too, I don't want to say they're due for a loss, but man, escaping against the Niners, then you beat the Packers, fine. Escaping against the Falcons, at some point here, they're going to be due for one of those one-possession losses. They've been on the good end of the one-possession wins. They're due for one of those one-possession losses. So we'll see how this goes, but I definitely think that this is a gettable game for the Saints, and a lot of it comes down to, like what you said, Dobbs' legs, because if Dobbs plays and has the success that Bajan had last week, Saints are screwed. Like, flat out screwed. But we'll see what happens, for sure. Justin to Get Me Cash says, more plays to Rashid, please. Yeah, I mean, please, 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 more to Rashid. I mean, Rashid is so damn good, and he always steps up when his number's called. I mean, the man saved 2 interceptions on his own this season, one for Derek Carr, one for Taysom Hill. He makes big plays every time you ask him to. Let's get him involved. And I think he could. I think this could be a good week for him, a good spot for him. Would not be surprised. Deep post to Shaheed. Derek's got to hit him. We'll see. I could see that happening. And honestly, something that Chase Daniel and Drew Brees pointed out, and I love that, it was 2nd and 10, and the Saints called a shot play. Now, Derek took the check down. Is what it is. I like that from Pete, though. I like that aggressive nature. I just hate when he calls a shot play on like 3rd and 3. That makes no sense to me. Paul says, I hope that he's not checked down Derek this weekend. Yeah, I hope not. Would not be surprised if it's quick outs, though. When you're playing a team like the Vikings, though, that wants to blitz a lot, you need quick man beaters and get some quick crossing routes in there, because if they're going to send 6, maybe even 7, quick hitter to Michael Thomas, maybe a quick kind of swing route to Alvin, maybe a quick crosser to Olave, something fast to get the ball out of Derek Carr's hands, and also so we avoid having to say check down Derek the whole time, and also keep the chains moving, and you don't want Derek taking a lot of hits. You want everyone being healthy going into the bye. But yeah, we'll see what happens. CCD Sports Talk says, need Kamara to get a bigger workload. Yeah, I mean, I was so conflicted about last week because he wasn't really utilized, but then you watch the film and you're like, man, Jamal Williams blocked his ass off, so it's hard to knock what they did. But then, on the other hand, you're like, man, it's Alvin. You got to find ways to manufacture touches. But considering they won, you're like, it doesn't hurt to take some of that tread off of Alvin's tires and make sure that he's healthy. So I keep going back and forth. So we'll see what happens, but I would expect a bigger workload for Kamara this week. And I think you got to, because, against a Vikings team that's going to send the house, they're coming downhill this way. Beat him with speed. Beat him with some quickness. So I think it's going to be a big game for Alvin if possible, and we'll see if the Saints can get it done. But it's going to be a fun one. Saints, Vikings, like I said at the top of the show, going to tell us an awful lot. If the Saints win, their playoff probability goes up to 86% going into the bye week, which I don't know about you guys. I fucking love to hear that. I love to hear 86%. That's pretty damn good to me. So we'll see what happens. Big test for the Saints. We'll see if they win. Win, lose, tie, whatever the result is, though, you guys know that we'll be here for a post-game recap on the Straight Up Saints podcast. So make sure you subscribe to Boo Crew Media's YouTube page for more content like this in the future. I'll make sure I take care of the Spotify and Apple stuff that you guys mentioned before, but that's going to wrap it up for us. So hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. Have a wonderful Friday. Enjoy the weekend. We'll be back on Sunday for more from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation. Have a great night, everyone.